I'm Andy Miuch and you are watching A News. Here are the headlines. Wildfires continue to ravage Los Angeles. Death toll rises to 24. Gaza ceasefire deal final draft presented to Israel and Hamas. Volodymyr Zelensky urges faster weapon deliveries from allies. Thank you for tuning in. Wildfires continue to rage in Los Angeles. The death toll has risen to 24 as weather services warn of new winds that could fan the flames.
The United States National Weather Service warns that lingering dry weather and strong winds in Southern California will hinder efforts to contain the catastrophic wildfires. Fierce winds have been largely blamed for turning the wildfires into infernos that have leveled entire neighborhoods. Now the National Weather Service has issued red flag warnings, saying wind speeds of up to 50 miles per hour are expected in the early days of the week. Experts believe these forecasts place Los Angeles at risk of worsening conditions.
And as much as I wish I could give really good news about the weather, I do not have that news to convey. In fact, I have pretty bad news about the weather. The short term, we're having another Santa Ana event, as I mentioned, tonight into tomorrow. It isn't that strong, although it could still cause problems. We'll see another one, though, early in the week, and then another one beyond that, and toward midweek, that could actually, and I hesitate to say this, it could rival the strength of the original extreme wind event that drove these two urban conflagrations into populated areas.
Meanwhile, authorities say they're prepared for these weather conditions. The county is fighting the fires with federal assistance, using a combination of water trucks and aircraft dropping water and fire retardant.
Elevated critical fire weather conditions will continue through Wednesday. Please rest assured that your County of Los Angeles Fire Department will be prepared. These winds, combined with low humidities and low fuel moistures, will keep the fire threat in all of Los Angeles County very high.
More than 100,000 people in Los Angeles County have been ordered to evacuate, while another 87,000 face evacuation warnings.
Qatar gave Israel and Hamas a final draft of a deal to end the war in Gaza after a midnight breakthrough in talks attended by U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's envoy. An official briefed on the negotiations told Reuters. The official said the text for a ceasefire and release of hostages was hammered out at talks in Doha, which included the chiefs of Israel's Mossad and Shin Bet spy agencies and Qatar's prime minister, as well as Steve Witkoff, who will become U.S. envoy when Trump takes office next week. Officials from the outgoing U.S. administration are also thought to have participated. Trump has said there would be, quote, hell to pay unless hostages held by Hamas aren't freed before he takes office on January 20th. Diplomatic row between Algeria and France intensified as Algiers rejected accusation of escalating tensions with Paris following a failed deportation of an influencer. Influencer Doualem was detained in Montpellier over a controversial TikTok video and sent to Algeria, but was returned the same day after Algiers refused him entry. French Interior Minister criticized Algeria for, quote, trying to humiliate France, while Algiers accused the French extreme right of spreading disinformation. On the latest spat between Paris and Algiers, we're talking to historian Maxime Gohen, coming to us live from the southwest of France. Welcome, Professor. Thank you for joining us. Now, the failed deportation of an influencer caused Paris to say that Algiers is trying to humiliate France, while Algeria says that France is launching a disinformation campaign. French Interior Minister said that visa-free travel for Algerian diplomatic passport holders will be suspended. What do you make of this latest diplomatic row?
First, we should look at the chronology. This influencer published a video where he explicitly called for physical violence against opponents to the Algerian government. The mayor of Montpellier, who by the way is an opponent to the current government, asked the prosecutor to launch a probe against this person. Then the Ministry of Interior decided it's more simple if we expel him purely and simply. Yet, the Algerian government used a law of 2008 which allows him to ban Algerian citizens from their own national soil if they are considered dangerous. So this man is the real person who is humiliated because he is rejected by France and rejected by his native country, Algeria, for violence. So, this is important there to mention that Algeria last year, 2024, accepted 1,700 Algerian nationals expelled by France for having committed crimes. So the French government is a bit surprised. Last year, you accept much more persons who did much worse than this one. So why do you refuse this one in particular?
Also, last year, the relations between the two countries deteriorated significantly after Emmanuel Macron said that the long-contested Western Sahara should be under Morocco's sovereignty. Algeria then withdrew its ambassador to Paris as it considers Morocco's presence there as an illegal occupation. What do you make of Macron's backing of Morocco on the issue and what it did to the relations between Paris and Rabat on one side and Paris and Algiers on the other?
So first, France is not the first country to recognize de facto the Moroccan sovereignty on Western Sahara. Before, the United States, Spain, Germany, Israel, Belgium, etc. recognized, at least in practice, Western Sahara as part of Moroccan territory. And it was part of a more general deal because there were some bilateral problems between France and Morocco, and all were completely liquidated last year. And it was confirmed by the state visit of President Macron in Morocco. He was very welcomed by the king, and he signed for 10 billion contracts with Morocco, especially in the field of energy and infrastructure. So, meanwhile, the, let's say, pro-Moroccan wing of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Defense, etc., told Mr. Macron, look, we had problems with Morocco, which is true, but we put all the issues on the table and we were able to find a way. And you signed for 10 billions of contract with Morocco. With Algeria, no matter what we do, they always, at one moment, they always refuse the hand and they provoke crisis. Just to give you a historical example, in 1982, President Mitterrand signed an agreement with Algeria, which made France to pay the Algerian gas 25% higher than the market price. And in exchange, Algeria was supposed to buy more French machines. But Algeria never bought these machines and just took the money. So there is a growing feeling from all sides of the French societies and French government saying that with Morocco we can make deals. Sometimes we can even make excellent deals, but with Algeria, with the government, not with the people, of course, it's just impossible.
Well, with the French military pullout from Africa we've been witnessing recently, and now straining of the relations with Algeria, how would you describe Paris's attitude and behavior towards its former colonies, and even more importantly, their response?
First of all, the countries of Black West Africa, they represent something like 0.5% of the French external trade. Only 3 countries in Africa are relevant for the French trade and economy: Morocco, South Africa, and Egypt. All the others are practically negligible. Algeria represents 8% of the French import of gas, for example. So economy has a very marginal importance, except for Morocco, which was not a colony but a protectorate. Then, concerning Western Black African countries, 3 of them experienced pro-Russian military coup against the elected government. After that, these countries turned to Russia, and the Wagner Group started plundering the natural resources in these countries. And the population gained nothing in this military dictatorship. More recently, there was another issue, which is the issue of the Chad. there was no military coup, but the current president said, you have been here since the 1970s, we don't need the French army anymore. So it is not the same crisis, not the same problem. I'm just skeptical. For 50 years, the Chad asked France for help each time they had a problem of rebellion, terrorism, etc. Each time it was the French army who saved the Chadian government. We will see what Chad will do. I wish only the best to the Chadian people, but I'm just looking at the past and seeing that each time they had an internal crisis, they needed the French army to maintain stability.
Do you believe that all the countries that had French military leave or other former colonies that have strained relationship with Paris, could there still be economic cooperation in the plans?
It depends on the government primarily, because, for example, in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, if the dictatorship collapses, I assume the new civilian government will return to the situation of 2020. Namely, France will give money for the development of the country, and the trade will return as it was before.
Professor, thank you so much.
Basically, we don't need these countries that much. For example, Niger sold us uranium in the past, that's fine, but it was a third or fourth rank provider. Kazakhstan, Canada, Australia were always more important provider of uranium than Niger, and we have in stock 8 years of consumption of uranium. So it's a bad news for Nigeria, not for us.
Professor, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights and opinions. US President-elect Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin are expected to have a call in the coming days or weeks, a top Trump advisor said. Mike Waltz, the incoming national security advisor, told ABC he doesn't think it's realistic to expel every Russian from every inch of Ukrainian soil, even Crimea. Asked specifically about contacts between Trump and Putin, Waltz said he expects a call to take place in the coming days or weeks. The Kremlin said that there are no specific preparations yet underway for a meeting between Putin and Trump, but added that there was an understanding and political will for one. US President-elect has repeatedly said he can bring a swift end to the nearly 3-year conflict without presenting a concrete plan. Tens of thousands of people took to the streets of Brussels to protest against proposed pension reforms, joining a nationwide strike. According to official reports, approximately 30,000 people participated in the demonstrations.
As a result of the protests in Brussels, air and rail transport were brought to a standstill and many schools were shut down. At Brussels airport, half of the flights were cancelled due to baggage handlers, security staff and other ground personnel joining the strike. The National Railway Operator, NMBS, reported that only a limited number of trains were running across the country. Public transport in the capital was also heavily impacted. The situation in the education sector was even more dramatic. Schools were closed, and tens of thousands of teachers joined a national rally in Brussels to protest against the pension reforms, currently under discussion as part of the government formation process.
This is a wake-up call to the government negotiators because, according to the information we're hearing, very concrete measures are to be taken with regard to pensions, which will have an impact on all the workers in this country, and particularly on the railway workers whom I represent, since the preferential schemes, as they're called, will be abolished, resulting in longer careers and having a financial impact on the total amount of pensions.
The government formation talks, which began after the June 2024 elections, have been dragging on for months, with no significant progress. The 5 political parties involved are struggling to reach a consensus on government finances and the contested pension reforms.
Over in Croatia, Zoran Milanovic secured his re-election and 5 more years as president, with more than 74% of the vote in the second round of the presidential election.
Croatia's President Zoran Milanovic, backed by the opposition Social Democratic Party, has secured re-election with over 74% of the vote in the presidential runoff for another 5 years. Milanovic, a critic of the EU and NATO, defeated Dragan Primorac of the ruling Conservative Party, who received 25% after winning 49.1% in the first round. Milanovic had previously won 49.1% in the first round 2 weeks ago, narrowly missing an outright victory. In his victory speech, Milanovic expressed gratitude for the trust shown by the electorate.
This is a big day for me personally, and I perceive this triumph as a form of acknowledgement, or at the very least, validation of my efforts over the past 5 years, representing an act of public trust in me.
Primorac conceded defeat and thanked voters and Prime Minister Andrej Plenković for their support.
I did my best to let the citizens get to know me better, to get to know my programme to the extent it was possible. I presented a vision of a better, different and proud Croatia.
Milanovic's victory strengthens his political influence and extends his rivalry with Prime Minister Plenković. The two have regularly clashed, with Milanovic accusing his conservative HDZ of corruption and Plenković calling Milanovic a threat to Croatia's standing.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has called on international allies to speed up weapon deliveries to Ukraine, citing the slow pace of aid in the ongoing war with Russia.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has once again urged global allies to fulfill their promises to provide essential military aid to Ukraine, particularly air defense systems to counter ongoing Russian aerial strikes. Zelensky also pointed out the delay in delivering promised air defense systems. Despite some progress in Ukraine's own military production, with 30% of the country's equipment now locally made, Zelensky emphasized that Western support has not been enough to counter the vast scale of Russian aggression. The latest attack by Russian forces has left around 23,000 households in Kherson without power. Over the past 24 hours, Russian forces launched 139 missile, drone and artillery attacks on Ukrainian military targets. Ukrainian forces repelled 46 out of 56 Russian attacks in the Pokrovsk sector with ongoing clashes. Zelensky also announced the capture of 2 North Korean soldiers in Russia's Kursk region and offered to exchange them for Ukrainian prisoners of war held by Russia.
About 300 North Korean troops deployed to Russia have been killed, with another 2,700 injured in combat against Ukrainian forces, according to a South Korean lawmaker briefed by the country's spy agency. Lee Seong-kwon said their rising number of casualties is attributed to a lack of understanding of modern warfare and the way Russia used the North Korean military. Citing the National Intelligence Service, Lee added that North Korean authorities appear to have called for its troops to commit suicide to evade capture. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Kyiv is ready to hand over North Korean soldiers to their leader Kim Jong-un if he can organize their exchange for Ukrainians held captive in Russia. Zelensky said earlier on Saturday that Ukraine had captured 2 North Korean soldiers in Russia's Kursk region, the first time Ukraine has announced the capture of North Korean soldiers alive since their entry into the nearly 3-year-old war last autumn. Ukrainian and Western assessments say that some 11,000 troops from Russia's ally North Korea have been deployed in the Kursk region to support Moscow's forces. Russia has neither confirmed nor denied their presence. The Kremlin has warned that new U.S. sanctions on Russia's energy sector could destabilize global markets, vowing to minimize their impact. Washington says the measures aim to cut off Moscow's funding for the war in Ukraine, potentially costing billions monthly.
The Kremlin stated that the newest US sanctions targeting Russia's energy sector could destabilize global markets, and Moscow would take all necessary steps to reduce their effects.
It is clear that the United States will continue to try to undermine the positions of our companies in non-competitive ways, but we expect that we will be able to counteract this.
On Friday, the US Treasury announced expanded sanctions targeting Gazpromneft, Surgutneftgaz, and 183 vessels shipping Russian oil. These measures aim to slash Russia's revenues used to finance the war in Ukraine. A US official stated the sanctions could cost Russia billions of dollars monthly if fully enforced. The sanctions have already prompted Chinese and Indian refiners, key Russian oil buyers, to seek alternative crude supplies. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre reinforced the US position.
We took aim today in your question at Russia's largest resources of revenue and imposed significant sanctions on the Russian energy sector. These sanctions certainly target both Russian oil and LNG, and we expect our actions to cost Russia upwards to billions of dollars per month.
She added that President Biden reaffirmed US support for Ukraine in a call with President Zelensky following the cancellation of a planned meeting in Rome to address wildfires in Southern California.
President of Azerbaijan Ilham Aliyev arrived to the United Arab Emirates for a working visit. Our Esra Abdel Salam brings more on that from Abu Dhabi.
Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev is in the United Arab Emirates on a working visit at the invitation of UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. Upon arrival at Abu Dhabi Zayed International Airport, President Aliyev was welcomed with a guard of honor by Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. Azerbaijan and the UAE enjoy strong ties established in 1992 with a significant economic and cultural cooperation. The UAE has invested $3.2 billion in Azerbaijan, while Azerbaijan has invested $1 billion in the UAE. Trade over between the two nations exceeded $88 million in 2024. Citizens also benefit from visa-free travel for up to 90 days, and over 60 weekly flights connect their major cities. The UAE's Masdar is a key partner in Azerbaijan's green energy development, spearheading projects like solar and wind power plants aimed at reducing carbon emissions by 2027. This visit highlights the growing cooperation between the two countries, especially in renewable energy.
That was our Esra Abdel Salam reporting from Abu Dhabi. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev met with Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, President of the United Arab Emirates. The heads of state emphasized the strategic partnership, highlighting the friendly and brotherly relations between Azerbaijan and the UAE. They noted the prevailing stability and peace in both nations. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev praised the excellent level of political relations and pointed to the expanding economic and trade ties. He underscored that the UAE's investments in Azerbaijan's renewable energy sector serve as a testament to the friendship and partnership between the two countries. The close cooperation in the traditional energy sector was also highlighted. Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week 2025 is set to start, bringing together leaders and experts from around the world and serving as a platform for discussions and collaboration aimed at addressing urgent challenges facing the planet. During the week, the 16th Zayed Sustainability Prize Awards ceremony will be held, with 11 awards being given for efforts in building an inclusive and sustainable world. The event will pay tribute to the legacy of Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, the first president of the UAE, known as the father of the nation. With over 3,500 expected to participate in the events, Abu Dhabi is poised to become the hub for global dialogue on sustainable development. Azerbaijan has lodged a protest with Eritrea over the detention of 3 Azerbaijani flagged vessels and their crews that have been held since November 2024. According to the Azerbaijani government, the 3 ships were detained after entering Eritrean waters due to rough weather conditions. Neba Muhyiddin reports from Port Sudan.
The detained ships left Baku and they were en route to Abu Dhabi via the Suez Canal. 26 people were on boarding according to the ship's owner. They entered the Eritrean waters due to the worsening weather conditions, but the Eritrean government stopped the 3 ships and detained all of the crew because they said they entered Eritrea illegally. Azerbaijan filed a complaint since November 7th when the crew was detained, but Eritrea said they inspected all of the ships and they did not set a date to release all of the crews. Azerbaijan sent diplomatic messages, strong diplomatic messages to Eritrea via their embassy in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia and also their embassy in Russia. This diplomatic issue between Eritrea and Azerbaijan is concerning for the 2 countries' ties and their long diplomatic ties. 18 out of 26 of the crew members are from Azerbaijani nationals. For any news, Neba Muhyiddin in Port Sudan.
The South Caucasus stands at a crossroads as Azerbaijan and Armenia navigate their path towards peace. One lingering question remains: what role does the OSCE Minsk group play in this evolving narrative? Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev says it needs to be dissolved.
The South Caucasus, a crossroads of ancient history and modern geopolitics, has long been a hotbed of tension. At the heart of this unrest lies the decades-old conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia, sparked by Armenia's occupation of Karabakh, an internationally recognized part of Azerbaijan. This conflict left behind a legacy of grief, with countless lives lost and lingering wounds that continue to shape the future of both nations. In an attempt to mediate peace, the OSCE Minsk Group was established in 1992. Yet despite the end of open hostilities after the Second Karabakh War in 2020, the group's effectiveness and relevance remain subjects of heated debate. President Aliyev recently reignited this debate, calling for the Minsk Group's dissolution as a necessary step towards lasting peace with Armenia.
The information that recently appeared in the media, namely the fascist statements of the first president of Armenia, once again confirms what we have known for quite a long time in principle, that Armenia was not going to vacate a single centimetre of Azerbaijani territory. They felt quite comfortable, as they thought, receiving billions of dollars worth of free arms from one ally and political and moral support from the other 2. Thus, all 3 co-chairs of the OSCE Minsk Group during the period for which I am responsible were unequivocally on the side of the occupier. I am telling you this as a person who has been conducting negotiations within the framework of the Minsk Group since 2004 and has met with this troika a great number of times. Therefore, of course, we could not expect to get these territories back through dialogue. Neither could we expect to restore our territorial integrity through dialogue.
The OSCE Minsk Group, tasked with resolving the Karabakh conflict, proposed several plans over the years, yet none succeeded in breaking the deadlock. 1997, a comprehensive agreement was proposed, but founded amid Armenia's internal political turmoil. September 1997, a step-by-step deal suggested phased troop withdrawals and the introduction of peacekeepers, but was again rejected by Armenia. November 1998, the Common State deal offered Karabakh broad autonomy, which Azerbaijan turned down due to sovereignty concerns. 2007, the Madrid Principles were unveiled but failed to gain traction. 2009, at the G8 summit, the US, Russia, and France presented the basic principles, but progress remained elusive. 2020, during the Second Karabakh War, Azerbaijan reclaimed its territories through military victory, sidelining the Minsk Group. President Ilham Aliyev has underscored that a peace treaty hinges on the formal dissolution of the Minsk Group and constitutional amendments to affirm Azerbaijan's territorial integrity.
I hope that all our conditions regarding the peace treaty will be accepted, because there are no extraordinary issues in these conditions. The abolition of the Minsk Group, the amendment of the constitution. Without these, a peace treaty is impossible. If Armenia does not need a peace treaty, we do not need it either.
The Minsk Group's critics include former diplomats who have described its operations as largely ceremonial. Former US Ambassador Richard E. Hoagland remarked,
"We stayed in five-star hotels where we were usually assigned suites on the executive floor that gave us access to a private dining room and full bar at no additional expense. We always sought out the best restaurants in the cities where we found ourselves. We lived well while we showed the OSCE flag and reminded Baku and Yerevan that the Minsk Group exists. But to be blunt, very, very little ever got accomplished."
Since the Second Karabakh War, Azerbaijan and Armenia have engaged in direct talks focused on 5 principles, including mutual recognition of borders and respect for territorial integrity. In December 2023, the two nations took a pivotal step by agreeing to exchange prisoners of war and work towards normalizing relations. This breakthrough was followed in April 2024 by a historic agreement to demarcate their shared border, with Armenia returning several villages to Azerbaijan. These milestones, achieved through direct negotiations, cast further doubt on the Minsk Group's role and the true interests of its member states in the current peace process.
The Korea Times published an article about international carbon market growth potential and how the 29th UN Climate Change Conference in Azerbaijan achieved significant progress on the issue. Kim Sung-woo of Kim and Chang noted that COP29 established rules for carbon credit trading and emissions reduction projects, boosting the international market. Japan and Singapore have already begun projects, while Korea aims to meet part of its 2030 climate goals through international mitigation. U.S. federal prosecutors have requested at least 15 years in prison for former Senator Bob Menendez, citing the extraordinary nature of his crimes. Menendez was convicted last summer on 16 corruption charges, including taking bribes and acting as a foreign agent for Egypt while chairing the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Prosecutors noted this as the first case of a senator abusing a committee leadership role or serving as a foreign agent while in office. Menendez, who resigned after his conviction, is seeking a reduced sentence, citing his ruined reputation and personal hardships. The Temple of Apollo, known as the Oracle Center and one of the best preserved temples of the ancient world, located in the west of Turkey, drew more than 130,000 visitors last year.
Excavation and restoration work at the Temple of Apollo in Hisar neighborhood, which began in 1905 under German archaeologists, has been carried out under the leadership of the Millet Museum Directorate since 2024. The museum team is working on improving visitor routes, reinforcing the surrounding walls, and landscaping the third largest temple in the world, which was built in the Ionic style. The Temple of Apollo, a popular destination for domestic and foreign tourists, hosted more than 111,000 visitors in 2023 and over 132,000 visitors last year. Dedicated to Apollo, the god of music, art, sun, fire, and poetry in Greek mythology, the temple draws attention with its well-preserved grandeur and mythological tales. The temple, which includes a total of 112 columns and an inner courtyard known as the Naos for public worship, stands out with its 17.5-meter-high sacred courtyard.
That's all from us for now. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.